5:58 a.m. Headlights flash. Crash. Mailbox number 4 bites the dust. This time I'm not fixing it. I'm setting a trap. From my window, I watch the black SUV back away like nothing happened. Rhonda Glass, the self-proclaimed queen of the HOA, tyrant in pearls and pantsuits. She doesn't know she's messing with someone who builds controlled chaos for Hollywood and knows exactly how to make it real. And trust me, in Hollywood, we don't just build things that break. We build things that break back. Drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from, because if you've ever dreamed of teaching an HOA Karen a lesson, this story's about to get wild. I moved into my grandparents' place on Willowbrook Court 3 months ago. It's one of those picture-perfect suburbs, white fences, trimmed lawns, and neighbors who smile too much. The HOA makes sure every blade of grass meets their holy standards. For a while, life was quiet. I built movie props and mechanical effects in my garage, enjoying the calm my grandparents once did. Then Rhonda Glass stormed into my life like a tornado in a pantsuit. The first crash came on a Monday morning in early September. I woke to the sound of metal scraping concrete and saw a black SUV speeding off. My new mailbox lay twisted on the curb, looking like aluminum regret. I figured it was some reckless teen or a distracted driver. I replaced it that afternoon, no big deal. 30 minutes later, Rhonda showed up with a gold HOA president badge pinned to her blazer like she was sheriff of suburbia. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. Behind her stood Derek Moss, the HOA vice president, gripping a clipboard. "Oh, Caleb, I heard about your mailbox." "How awful," she said, peering inside my house. "We've never had anything like this happen here. So unusual." The way she said it made it sound like I'd brought chaos to her perfect kingdom. She asked about my work, visitors, and future plans for the house. "We just want new residents to fit in," she added with that plastic grin. "Some do naturally. Others need guidance." 2 weeks later, same time, same angle, same wrecked mailbox. I told myself it was bad luck. Maybe someone held a grudge against the previous owner. Still, I installed a security camera facing the street. Rhonda's next visit came with less sympathy and more questions. "Do you have HOA permission to install that camera?" she asked sweetly. When I said it was for protection, she smiled thinly. "Of course. Just remember, cameras can't face neighbors' homes. Privacy is everything here." She handed me a fat HOA rulebook written by lawyers who clearly charged by the word. The third crash hit on a crisp October morning. I was ready. From my window, I watched the black SUV line up the shot and ram my mailbox at exactly 5:58 a.m. This time, I got the plate number, same SUV that sat in Rhonda Glass's driveway. I reviewed the footage all day. Every other Monday. Same pattern. Same deliberate hit. This wasn't random, it was targeted harassment. But why? Then it clicked. During our first chat, Rhonda had asked if I was single, mentioned a coffee shop, and hinted at getting to know each other. I'd politely declined. Her smile had flickered. After the third accident, she came by again, taking photos like she was admiring artwork. "Strange how it's always your mailbox," she mused. "Maybe move it somewhere safer?" When I said it had been in the same spot for 30 years, she shrugged. "Sometimes change brings unforeseen consequences," she said, and left. That night, I sat in my workshop surrounded by props, steel, and ideas. In Hollywood, we make illusions, things that look dangerous but aren't, and things that look fragile but survive explosions. I stared at the pile of bent metal in the corner. This time, I wasn't rebuilding a mailbox. I was building a message. Rhonda Glass wanted to play demolition derby with my property. Fine. But she was about to learn that some things hit back harder. I picked up a black paint chip from the wreckage and held it to the light, a perfect match to her SUV's bumper. That night, I opened my laptop. I wasn't designing a mailbox this time. I was designing a mousetrap. Monday, 5:58 a.m. Coffee in hand, I stood at my window as Rhonda's SUV rolled upright on schedule. She didn't know I'd been filming every accident from multiple angles. The impact came exactly as predicted, careful alignment, then full throttle. Metal screamed, the mailbox crumpled, and she reversed away like a guilty getaway driver. But this time, I had everything. Her license plate, her face, her arrogance, all in crystal clear HD. Half an hour later, she knocked. No Derek, no fake concern, just Rhonda, polished and smug, her gold HOA badge glinting in the morning light. "Caleb, honey, we need to talk," she said, strutting into my living room uninvited. "This mailbox situation is getting concerning." "Concerning what?" I asked. She perched on my couch like a queen holding court. "This neighborhood has standards. Some neighbors fit in, others need correction." Her tone was syrupy but sharp. She grilled me about my work schedule, deliveries, and whether I had a permit to run a home business. "The thing is, Caleb," she continued, "Derek and I keep this community safe and orderly. We can't have residents who ignore the rules." Her speech was pure intimidation wrapped in polite suburbia, a threat disguised as concern. She was marking her territory, reminding me that my peace here depended on her approval. But she had no clue she was threatening someone who literally builds traps for movie villains. When she finished her lecture about mutual respect, I smiled. "You're right, Rhonda. Standards matter. People should get exactly what they deserve." Something in my tone made her falter before flashing her fake smile again. "I'm glad we understand each other," she said, heading for the door. "Oh, and Caleb, maybe move that mailbox somewhere safer. These accidents seem to happen only to yours. We wouldn't want anyone to get hurt." The casual menace in her voice was breathtaking, half confession, half warning. After she left, I reread the HOA regulations she'd given me. It was a masterpiece of legal manipulation. Vague phrases like community standards and aesthetic harmony that gave the board unlimited power. No grass over 3 inches. Paint must be neutral. No unapproved signage or disturbing activity. I called my neighbor, Betty Chambers, a 70-year-old widow who knew all the local politics. When I told her what happened, she sighed. "Oh, honey," she said. "Be careful. That woman's driven out 3 families in 2 years, the Johnsons, the Rodriguezes, and those nice folks with the twins. She fines them until they can't stay." Betty showed me her own stack of violation notices, 23 in total. Grass too tall by fractions of an inch. Non-compliant flowers. An improperly displayed American flag. Fines from $75 to $300 each. "She tests every newcomer," Betty said. "If you submit, she leaves you alone. If you stand up to her, she destroys you, paper by paper." That afternoon, Rhonda made her move. Derek appeared at my door, pale as ever, holding a clipboard. He handed me a yellow violation notice claiming my grass was 3.2 inches tall instead of the 3-inch limit. Fine, $75, payable in 48 hours. I measured my lawn, identical to every other yard on the street. Only mine got a notice. When I took photos for proof, I saw Rhonda watching from her window, eyes sharp as a hawk. The violation was posted on my door like a public shaming, bright yellow and impossible to miss. Neighbors passed by, silent, grateful it wasn't their turn. Message received, comply or be crushed. That night, I sat in my workshop, staring at the pile of twisted mailboxes. Betty's warning echoed in my head. Rhonda thought she'd found her next victim. She had no idea she'd picked the wrong guy. 3 families forced out by a woman drunk on the tiny taste of power that comes with HOA presidency. How many more would follow if no one stood up? How many neighbors were tiptoeing around, too scared to plant the wrong flowers or paint the wrong white? Watching Rhonda nail that yellow slip to my door like a medieval decree, I understood this wasn't about mailboxes. It was about control, and she'd picked the wrong guy to control. The yellow notices arrived like clockwork. Every Tuesday, Derek Moss showed up with his clipboard, posting another violation while Rhonda watched from her SUV across the street. It was psychological warfare dressed as municipal procedure, efficient, methodical, cruel. By the end of week 2, my front door looked like a crime board. 5 violations in one morning, illegal paint, grass 0. 2 inches too tall, aggressive parking, suspicious tool use, failure to comply with community aesthetics. Rhonda had dropped the act. This was a campaign. By week 3 they got creative. My legally parked car suddenly created a sightline hazard, $200. Power tools used during permitted hours became excessive noise, $300. Ridiculous, since I was building a whisper-quiet jewelry box when Derek knocked. I documented everything like a pro. Timestamps, photos, paint samples, decibel readings proving I was quieter than a normal conversation. None of it mattered. Rhonda had weaponized the rulebook into a personal destruction system. Neighbors stopped looking at me. Isolation was intentional. Betty Chambers, my 70-year-old next-door ally, slipped me a note. She's driving by 6 times a day taking photos. She did this to the Martinez family before she pushed them out. Be careful. I tried a subtle legal pushback, a small yard sign reading area under HOA surveillance with official-looking symbols. Factually accurate. Regulation compliant. 2 hours later Derek handed me a $500 violation, unauthorized signage that creates discord. When I argued, he looked embarrassed. Rhonda says the intent is confrontational, he whispered. That evening Rhonda called. Her voice was cold, professional, fury barely contained. Caleb, sweetie, this community has rules. When residents think they're smarter than the system, things get complicated. Your current violations total over $1,000. Keep playing these games and it gets worse. The threat landed. I did the math in my head and realized, escalating fines, impossible deadlines, her usual playbook. Sell or suffocate. The next violation hit the heart, landscaping placement in the prohibited setback zone. The memorial garden my grandparents planted, Sundays with Grandma, Grandpa humming while laying stones, was suddenly illegal. $750 plus forced removal within 72 hours. That one felt like an attack on memory, not pixels on a rulebook. When Derek delivered Violation 7, excessive garage use for non-residential purposes, I asked him straight, "Do you actually believe any of this?" He looked around like Rhonda might be listening through the hedges. I do what she tells me. I need this for my city council resume. Rhonda's got connections. That night I added up the damage. Fines piling up, deadlines shrinking, pressure to force me out. Rhonda had perfected her machine for crushing dissent. But she'd missed one thing. She'd picked someone who builds illusions for a living. I don't just make things that fall apart. I build things that look fragile and turn out to be unexpectedly strong. The memorial garden mattered. So did everything my grandparents left me. If Rhonda wanted to play hardball, fine. I was about to turn my workshop skills into a very specific project she wouldn't see coming. Hours tending the roses they'd planted together, 30 years of careful cultivation, stepping stones Grandpa laid by hand so neighbors could wander and enjoy. It was their love made visible. Rhonda destroyed it on a Thursday in November. She arrived with Derek and a tow truck, both armed with clipboards and measuring devices as if on an official survey. She marched into the garden in her business face, pointed while Derek scribbled, then began trampling the beds. Not clumsy, deliberate. She crushed antique roses that had survived Michigan winters for decades, scattered the memorial stones Grandpa placed for their anniversary, and ground daffodil bulbs into the soil with her heels while Derek documented violations. When I ran out, she looked up with that same plastic smile. "Oh, Caleb, we're conducting the mandatory inspection noted in your violation. These plantings are in the prohibited setback, a danger to emergency vehicles." She gestured at the ruined flowers like they were hazardous waste. The casual cruelty was suffocating. 30 years of Sundays and careful hands reduced to a lecture about safety. Kneeling among the wreckage, I picked up broken stones and felt something inside me crack. I opened my grandparents' gardening book and found Grandpa's note between the pages. "We don't plant roses for today. We plant them so someone else can sit in the shade tomorrow." I sat down and cried, not from despair, but because I remembered why I started. Rhonda shrugged and wrote another violation. Derek looked uncomfortable for the first time, glancing between the smashed beds and his clipboard, muttering about following procedure. The notice demanded removal of all non-compliant vegetation within 72 hours, fines to follow if I didn't comply. She surveyed her handiwork like an artist admiring a finished piece. Betty Chambers came over in tears that afternoon. She'd filmed the whole thing from her window, clear footage of Rhonda trampling the roses while claiming property line measurements. The garden was registered with the local historical society. Grandma had given tours. Betty handed me the video and a folder of records. "She's gone too far," she said. I spent the evening trying to salvage bulbs and cut back bushes, knowing some roots might live and some memories couldn't be replanted. The violation total climbed to $2,300. Rhonda gave me 7 days to pay or face foreclosure proceedings. Her playbook was familiar. Escalate fines, force people to sell. But she'd miscalculated. I called in sick and spent 3 days in the garage designing something specific, not just a mailbox, but a statement, a trap disguised as surrender. The neighbors were silent now, too afraid to be seen helping. Their fear made Rhonda's power look absolute, but their silence was also complicity. I couldn't accept that. Sunday night, standing in the moonlit wreckage, I promised Grandpa I wouldn't let her win. Betty knocked with cookies and the folder she'd kept for 2 years. Every violation, every family pushed out, every abuse of power. "I was waiting for someone brave enough to fight back," she whispered, handing it over. I spread blueprints across the workbench, measured twice, and began ordering materials. Monday morning, Rhonda's little campaign ends, and she won't forget the sound it makes. I spread the blueprints across my workbench like a general preparing for war, calculating stress loads and impact resistance while Willowbrook Court slept. In Hollywood, we build 2 kinds of props, those meant to break and those meant to survive explosions. Mine would be the second kind. The foundation went 4 feet deep, reinforced with steel and concrete strong enough to anchor something far heavier than a mailbox. I worked in phases during Derek's lunch breaks and Rhonda's errands, disguising everything as landscaping repairs. To neighbors, it looked like I was finally complying with HOA demands. On paper, it was perfect, regulation height, approved color, every measurement checked twice. In reality, it was a steel fortress waiting for its test. Inside the standard aluminum shell sat a solid core anchored to that concrete base, capable of stopping a truck. Rhonda's surveillance made the schedule tight, 6 drive-bys a day, each one with her camera flashing. I worked in her blind spots, concrete at 10:30 after Derek's visits, wiring cameras by moonlight, feeding footage to cloud storage. Betty helped from across the street, adding hidden angles from her window. By midweek, Rhonda's paranoia spiked. She started parking across the street, spying with binoculars. Derek hinted she was concerned about unauthorized work, but my permits were airtight. Still, new violations arrived daily: tool noise, visual pollution, improper material storage. Each one came with shorter deadlines and higher fines. Thursday's offense took the prize, a $300 citation for an unpermitted memorial marker honoring my grandparents' garden. The woman had no shame. Friday night, I installed the final pieces. From the street, the mailbox looked innocent, standard, regulation perfect. Beneath the surface, it was engineered to survive an apocalypse. Betty kept watch, whispering, "That woman's terrorized this place too long. Someone needs to show her consequences." Saturday morning, Rhonda showed up herself, gold HOA badge gleaming like a sheriff's star. "Caleb, sweetie, your balance is $3,200. Pay by Monday or we'll foreclose." I looked at her standing among the ruins of my grandparents' garden. "You know what, Rhonda? Monday morning's going to be educational for both of us." Something in my tone made her hesitate, but only for a moment. "I'm glad you're finally being reasonable," she said. Sunday night, 11:47 p.m. The trap was set. Cameras armed, motion sensors primed. Monday, 5:57 a.m. Coffee in one hand, phone in the other, I watched her SUV rumble down the street. Betty was live-streaming from her window. Rhonda slowed, lined up her target like always, then hit the gas. The impact was glorious. Steel met arrogance in an explosion of twisted metal and shattered pride that echoed 3 blocks away. The immovable object had finally met its unstoppable force, and won. The mailbox didn't even flinch. Rhonda's SUV folded around it like it had hit a steel monument to karma. The impact crumpled her hood, sent steam roaring from the radiator, and detonated every airbag in the car. Metal screamed, glass rained across the street, and fluids painted rainbow puddles under the wreck. Her weapon of HOA justice was now a smoldering heap. Rhonda sat stunned behind the airbag, hair wild with static, staring at the untouched mailbox gleaming in the sunrise like a trophy. I stepped outside calmly, recording with my phone. Betty's voice echoed from across the street, narrating the live stream. We are witnessing justice, folks. Share this with anyone who's ever met a power-hungry HOA president. Neighbors poured out with phones raised. Rhonda stumbled from her car, shouting, "This mailbox is illegal. You set me up." But with dozens filming from a public street, her panic only made her look guiltier. I smiled. "Actually, Rhonda, it's just properly engineered. Strong foundations, quality materials. You know, standards." The irony hit hard. Derek appeared, took one look, and walked away without a word. Within hours, he'd resign and pretend he'd never been involved. Rhonda spun in circles, screaming, "Stop recording! This is private property." But no one listened. Betty's stream exploded online, #MailboxRevenge trending before sunrise, thousands tuning in to watch suburban tyranny collapse in real time. The footage was airtight, multiple angles, timestamps, and witnesses. Rhonda had documented her own downfall with cinematic precision. When emergency crews arrived, I told her quietly, "I never wanted this war. You started it with the first mailbox. I'm just finishing it." The silence afterward was beautiful. No threats, no fear, just the hiss of a ruined engine cooling in the morning air. Within hours, the video went viral. News stations replayed HOA president's mailbox meltdown on a loop. Her insurance denied the claim. Ramming a car into a stationary object wasn't covered. Her reign ended under a pile of twisted metal and public humiliation. By Friday, the community center overflowed. Families she'd bullied for years stepped forward at last. The Williams family testified, "She fined us $2,000 for a mailbox color she called aggressively blue." The Martinezes spoke of a 50-year-old oak tree she'd ordered cut down. The Johnsons told how she fined them for their toddler's laughter. Every story echoed the same pattern: fabricated violations, crushing fines, and fear. This time, though, the neighborhood wasn't afraid. Rhonda's empire of control had collapsed, defeated by one mailbox built to stand its ground. Rhonda made one last attempt to hold power, storming into the meeting with a briefcase of threats and paperwork. She accused me of building an illegal booby trap meant to harm her, demanding criminal investigations and restitution. It was a desperate performance, but the crowd, people she'd bullied for years, was done believing her. The mask was off. The queen of the HOA was just a petty tyrant with a gold badge. The vote of no confidence passed unanimously. 47 households removed Rhonda from every HOA position, stripped her authority, and elected new leadership focused on community instead of control. Derek had already resigned by email, citing philosophical differences and his new city council campaign. Betty Chambers won the presidency by acclamation, promising fairness and common sense. Her first act, canceling every fine Rhonda had issued in the last 2 years and creating an appeals board for residents who'd been targeted. The change was immediate. Within a month, Rhonda's house hit the market. With no car and no allies, she faded into isolation. Neighbors avoided her, former friends ghosted her, and the local grocery store banned her after another meltdown about conspiracies. The woman who once ruled with fear was now completely alone. That mailbox, my so-called weapon of defiance, became more than steel. It was proof that when you build strong and stand your ground, no bully, no matter their title, can uproot what's right. Kids asked about the famous mailbox that fought back, and new residents requested tours. Other neighborhoods even called for advice on anti-Karen infrastructure. Apparently, the movement had begun. 6 months later, while I worked in my restored memorial garden, a young family from Rhonda's old house knocked on my door. Their kids ran to the mailbox, amazed. "Can you teach us how to build one?" the father asked. Our last HO made Rhonda look reasonable. I realized her legacy wasn't fear, it was resilience. People were learning to push back, to build things that last. Under Betty's leadership, the HOA turned genuine. Block parties replaced fines, shared spaces got maintained, and disputes were solved with conversation, not citations. Property values rose. Families returned. Willowbrook Court finally became what my grandparents envisioned: strong, kind, and united. Now, I still drink my morning coffee by the window, but instead of watching for conflict, I see kids walking to school, gardens blooming, and neighbors waving. Justice didn't knock politely here, It arrived with the sound of crumpling metal and the sight of a bully getting exactly what she deserved. The fortress mailbox still stands gleaming at dawn, a monument to courage and quiet strength. A reminder that tyrants only win when good people stay silent. In our neighborhood, silence is over. Drop your own HOA war stories in the comments, and remember, sometimes the best defense is just building something stronger than the person trying to tear it down.